Good morning. This is Kim Blaylock with SDG Bible Study. That's the SOLI DEO GLORIA Bible Study coming to you on this Tuesday morning, January the 7th, 2025. I hope everyone is doing well as we're getting into this week and as we're moving right along the month of January and moving right along in our reading from Paul David Tripp's Everyday Gospel, a daily reading from Scripture and a devotional from Paul David Tripp that we read every morning. And today we'll be reading today's reading for January the 7th. We'll be in Genesis chapters 22, 23, and 24 this morning. So join me as we read God's Word together. Genesis chapter 22. Now it happened after these things that God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, and he said, Here I am. Then he said, Take now your son, your only one whom you love, Isaac, and go forth to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains, of which I will tell you. So Abraham rose early in the morning and saddled his donkey and took two of his young men with him and Isaac his son, and he split wood for the burnt offering and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. On the third day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from a distance. And Abraham said to his young man, Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there, and we will worship, and we will return to you. Then Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and put it on Isaac his son, and he took in his hand the fire and the knife, so the two of them walked on together. Then Isaac spoke to Abraham his father and said, My father. And he said, Here I am, my son. And he said, Behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? And Abraham said, God will provide for himself the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. So the two of them walked on together. Then they came to the place of which God had told him, and Abraham built the altar there and arranged the wood and bound his son Isaac and put him on the altar on top of the wood. And Abraham stretched out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of Yahweh called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. And he said, Do not stretch out your hand against the boy and do nothing to him, for now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only one, from me. Then Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw, and behold, there was a ram after it had been caught in the thicket by its horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up for a burnt offering in the place of his son. And Abraham called the name of that place, Yahweh will provide. And it is said this day, in the mount of Yahweh it will be provided. Then the angel of Yahweh called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, By myself I have sworn, declares Yahweh, because you have done this thing and have not spared your son, your only one. Indeed, I will greatly bless you, and I will greatly multiply your seed as the stars of the heavens, and as the sand which is on the seashore. And your seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. In your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because you have listened to my voice. So Abraham returned to his young men, and they arose and walked together to Beersheba, and Abraham lived at Beersheba. Now it happened after these things that it was told to Abraham, saying, Behold, Milcah also has borne children to your brother Nahor. Uz his firstborn, and Buz his brother, and Kemuel the father of Aram, and Chesed, and Hazo, and Pildash, and Jidlaph, and Bethuel. And Bethuel was the father of Rebekah. These 8 Milcah bore to Nahor, Abraham's brother, and his concubine, whose name was Ruhamah, also bore Tebah, and Gaam, and Tahash, and Maacah. Chapter 23. And Sarah lived 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. She died in Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan, and Abraham came to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. Then Abraham rose from before his dead and spoke to the sons of Heth, saying, I am a sojourner and a foreign resident among you. Give me a possession for a burial site among you, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. And the sons of Heth answered Abraham, saying to him, Hear us, my lord, you are a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our burial sites. None of us will refuse you his burial sites for burying your dead. So Abraham rose and bowed to the people of the land, the sons of Heth. And he spoke with them, saying, If it is your desire for me to bury my dead out of my sight, hear me and meet with Ephron, the son of Zohar, for me, that he may give me the cave of Machpelah, which belongs to him, which is at the end of his field. Full price, let him give it to me in your presence, and as a possession for a burial site. Now Ephron was sitting among the sons of Heth, and Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the hearing of the sons of Heth, even of all who went in at the gate of his city, saying, No, my lord, hear me. I give you the field, I give you the cave that is in it. In the sight of the sons of my people, I give it to you. Bury your dead. And Abraham bowed before the people of the land, and he spoke to Ephron in the hearing of the people of the land, saying, If you will only please hear me, I will give the silver for the field. Accept it from me, that I may bury my dead there. Then Ephron answered Abraham, saying to him, My lord, hear me. A piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver, what is that between me and you? So bury your dead. So Abraham heard Ephron, and Abraham weighed out for Ephron the silver which he had named in the hearing of the sons of Heth, 400 shekels of silver, commercial standard. So Ephron's field, which was in Machpelah, which faced Mamre, the field and the cave which was in it, and all the trees which were in the field that were within all the confines of its border, were deeded over to Abraham as purchase in the sight of the sons of Heth, before all who came in at the gate of this city. After this, Abraham buried Sarah his wife in the cave of the field at Machpelah, facing Mamre, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. So the field and the cave that is in it were deeded over to Abraham for a possession, for a burial site by the sons of Heth. Now to chapter 24. Now Abraham was old, advanced in age, and Yahweh had blessed Abraham in every way. And Abraham said to his servant, the oldest of his household, who ruled over all that he owned, Please place your hand under my thigh, and I will make you swear by Yahweh, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I live, but you will go to my land and to my kin and take a wife for my son Isaac. And the servant said to him, Suppose the woman is not willing to follow me to this land. Should I indeed take your son back to the land from where you came? Then Abraham said to him, Beware lest you take my son back there. Yahweh, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my kin, and who spoke to me and who swore to me, saying, Take your seed, I will give this land. He will send his angel before you, and you will take a wife for my son from there. But if the woman is not willing to follow you, then you will be free from this oath of mine. Only do not take my son back there. So the servant placed his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master and swore to him concerning this matter. Then the servant took 10 camels from the camels of his master, and he went with all kinds of good things of his master's in his hand. So he rose and went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor. And he made the camels kneel down outside the city by the well of water at evening time, the time when the women go out to draw water. And he said, O Yahweh, the God of my master Abraham, please cause this to happen before me today, and show loving kindness to my master Abraham. Behold, I am standing by the spring of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Now may it be that the young woman to whom I say, Please let down your jar so that I may drink, and she says, Drink, and I will give water to your camels to drink also. May she be the one whom you have decided for your servant Isaac. And by this I will know that you have shown loving kindness to my master." And before he had finished speaking, behold, Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Abraham's brother Nahor, was coming out with her jar on her shoulder. Now the young woman was very beautiful in appearance, a virgin, and no man had known her. And she went down to the spring and filled her jar and came up. Then the servant ran to meet her and said, "Please give me a little water to drink from your jar." And she said, "Drink, my lord." And she quickly lowered her jar to her hand and gave him a drink. Now, when she had finished giving him a drink, she said, "I will draw also for your camels until they have finished drinking." So she hurried and emptied her jar into the watering channel and ran along to the well to draw, and she drew for all his camels. Meanwhile, the man was gazing at her in silence to know whether Yahweh had made his journey successful or not. Now it happened that when the camels had finished drinking, the man took a gold ring weighing a half shekel and 2 bracelets for her wrist weighing 10 shekels in gold, and said, "Whose daughter are you? Please tell me. Is there a place for us to lodge in your father's house?" And she said to him, "I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor." And she said to him, "We have plenty of both straw and feed, and a place to lodge in." Then the man bowed low and worshipped Yahweh. And he said, "Blessed be Yahweh, the God of my master Abraham, who has not forsaken his loving kindness and his truth toward my master. As for me, Yahweh has guided me in the way to the house of my master's brothers." Then the young woman ran and told her mother's household about these things. Now Rebekah had a brother whose name was Laban, and Laban ran outside to the man at the spring. Now it happened when he saw the ring and the bracelets on his sister's wrists, and when he heard the words of Rebekah, his sister, saying, "This is what the man said to me," he came out to the man, and behold, he was standing by the camels at the spring. And he said, "Come in, blessed of Yahweh. Why do you stand outside, since I have prepared the house and a place for the camels?" So the man came into the house. Then Laban unloaded the camels, and he gave straw and feed to the camels, and water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. The food was set before him to eat, but he said, "I will not eat until I have spoken my words." And he said, "Speak." So he said, "I am Abraham's servant, and Yahweh has greatly blessed my master, so he has become great, and he has given him flocks and herds and silver and gold and male slaves and female slaves and camels and donkeys. Now Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master in her old age, and he has given him all that he has. And my master made me swear, saying, You shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites in whose land I live, but you shall go to my father's house and to my family and take a wife for my son." Then I said to my master, "Suppose the woman does not follow me?" And he said to me, "Yahweh, before whom I have walked, will send his angel with you and will make your journey successful, and you will take a wife for my son from my family and from my father's house. Then you will be free from my oath when you come to my relatives. Now, if they do not give her to you, you will be free from my oath." So I came today to the spring and said, "O Yahweh, the God of my master Abraham, if now you will make my journey on which I go successful, behold, I am standing by the spring of water. And may it be that the maiden who comes out to draw, and to whom I say, Please let me drink a little water from your jar, and she will say to me, You drink, and I will draw for your camels also. She is the woman whom Yahweh has decided upon for my master's son." Before I had finished speaking in my heart, behold, Rebekah was coming out with her jar on her shoulder, and she went down to the spring and drew, and I said to her, "Please give me a drink." Then she hurried and lowered her jar from her shoulder, and she said, "Drink, and I will also give water to your camels to drink." So I drank, and she also gave water to the camels to drink. Then I asked her and said, "Whose daughter are you?" And she said, "The daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bore to him." And I put the ring on her nose and the bracelets on her wrist. And I bowed low and worshipped Yahweh. And I blessed Yahweh, the God of my master Abraham, who had guided me in the true way to take the daughter of my master's relative. for his son. So now, if you're going to show loving kindness and truth with my master, tell me, and if not, tell me, that I may turn to the right or to the left. Then Laban and Bethuel answered and said, the matter comes from Yahweh, so we cannot speak to you bad or good. Behold, Rebekah is before you. Take her and go, and let her be the wife of your master's son, as Yahweh has spoken. Now it happened that when Abraham's servant heard their words, he bowed himself to the ground before Yahweh. The servant brought out articles of silver and articles of gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah. He also gave precious things to her brother and to her mother. Then he and the men who were with him ate and drank and spent the night. And they arose in the morning, and he said, send me away to my master. But her brother and her mother said, let the young woman stay with us a few days, or even 10. Afterward, she will go. And he said to them, do not delay me, since Yahweh has made my way successful. Send me away that I may go to my master. And they said, we will call the young woman and ask about her wishes. Then they called Rebekah, and she said to her, will you go with this man? And she said, I will go. Thus they sent away their sister Rebekah and her nurse with Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, may you, our sister, become thousands of 10,000s, the gate of those who hate him. Then Rebekah arose with her young woman, and they mounted the camels and went after the man. So the servant took Rebekah and went. Now Isaac had come from going to Beer-lahai-roi, for he was living in the land of the Negev. And Isaac went out to muse in the field toward evening, and he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, camels were coming. And Rebekah lifted up her eyes and saw Isaac, and dismounted from the camel. Then she said to the servant, who is that man walking in the field to meet us? And the servant said, he is my master. Then she took her veil and covered herself. And the servant recounted to Isaac all the things that he had done. Then Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent, and he took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. Thus Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Now to our devotional reading for this morning. When life seems to make no sense, we are not without hope or help, because we are the children of God. I was facing my 6th surgery in 2 years. For me, it was a moment of irrationality. Life didn't make sense anymore. This surgery was going to be much harder and more painful than the others, and it would require a much longer recovery. If you have a surgery every 4 months, your body doesn't have the time it needs to recover before the next surgery. My body was weak and worn down. I wasn't able to sleep well and had little energy to face the day. I had the most wonderful ministry opportunities I had ever had. I had more gospel influence than I thought I would ever have. I looked around and saw so many places that needed gospel explanation and application, but I simply had no strength. It made no sense that I would be in the moment of my greatest ministry influence and yet physically unable to do what I had been called and gifted to do. Where was God? What was he doing? What had he given me for this moment? Such was the life of Abraham. The miracle son, Isaac, had been born. God had been faithful to his promise. But now, in a shocking turn of the story, God asked Abraham to sacrifice the promised son. Genesis 22. It seemed like the cruelest trick ever. Build hope and destroy it in a moment. Here's life seeming to make no sense at all. In recounting the story, Hebrews tells us that God was testing Abraham. It's Hebrews 11:17 through 19. This was not a test where Abraham would get a pass or a fail. This was like the tempering of metal, heating it to a high temperature to make it stronger. In asking Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, God was not doing something to him, but doing something wonderful for him. God was building the faith of Abraham by proving his willingness to obey God, no matter what, and by giving Abraham the opportunity to experience the faithfulness of God's provision in moments of dire need. You see, from the perspective of Abraham's covenant making and covenant keeping Lord, this seemingly senseless moment was a very sensible part of his plan for Abraham and all who would be blessed through him. All it needs to be noted that in this difficult moment, Abraham was not without hope or help because he was a covenant son. Abraham possessed powerful, life-changing treasures. What did he have? He had the clear command of God. He had the clear promise of God. He had the blessing of the presence of God. And he was blessed to be the object of the infinite power of God. Abraham was not without help or hope because he was not alone. The story of the near sacrifice of Isaac points us to the sacrifice of another promised son, Jesus. This son died so that we too would be blessed in moments of need with God's presence, power, commands, and promises, always having the help and hope we need, even when life doesn't seem to make sense. And that's going to conclude our reading from this morning. And oh, how so many times in our life we have moments where life doesn't make sense. That's when we need to be like we see Abraham, trusting God, putting his faith in him, knowing that God has his best in mind, and God will provide a way, even though when we don't understand it. He went the full distance, binding his son and laying him on the altar, and then seeing the provided ram from God. What a beautiful story of the faith of God, the loving kindness of God, but the faith and the trust of Abraham. And may we be that way as well. Hope you have a blessed day today, and you give God the glory in everything that you do. Soli Deo Gloria.